Yeah, well, so I'm Menno Mekes and I'm a building engineer, and I always wanted to be an architect. So that's why I work in an architect's office. But in the end, I found out that I really love architecture, but I love engineering more.
Hello friends, welcome back to BIMvoice. Today I have the pleasure to talk to Menno Mekes from Netherlands. Hello Menno, how are you doing?
Hi, Petru. I'm doing great. Thank you for having me here on the show.
I'm very happy to have you here, and I'm really looking forward to learn more about yourself and about the projects you are involved with. Let's start with telling a few words about yourself and your experience, your projects you are involved in.
Yeah, well, so I'm Menno Mekes and I'm a building engineer, and I always wanted to be an architect. So that's why I work in an architect's office. But in the end, I found out that I really love architecture, but I love engineering more. That's why I like it to work in architecture, but not being the designer, because designing is like rendering, right? It's really a long time studying and doing a lot of different stuff of the same. So basically, I like to do a bit more of the technical stuff. I started out as an AutoCAD drafter in this office. This is my first job, and it's still my current job. Yeah, and then suddenly we started working in BIM, or actually with Revit, and that was basically a great switch for me because I was really thinking of another building that I have to draw in AutoCAD. It became a bit repetitive. That's also the thing that I really like, is that I don't like repetitive stuff. So in the end, I started to automate all these repetitive tasks that we have. I'm still doing that, and that's basically one of the main aspects of my job, to always find new ways, rethink our workflow.
I like that. That sounds very interesting. Are you using Dynamo or straight up Python for scripting?
But we actually work, because of course this is BIMvoice is about openBIM, right? So we do work in openBIM a lot, not just exporting to IFC, but although Revit is basically our core program that we use, because you can get the best outputs. Actually, we start in SketchUp a lot. So we have a lot of designers, architects that work in SketchUp. So that's also one of these workflows that I automated, that instead of thinking we should do something, or it should get from SketchUp to Revit, and this is how we do it. I studied my colleagues to see how are they working, how are they using SketchUp in a way, because floor plans are plans, so they model them. Actually, they draw them in SketchUp, because we mainly do housing. So the floor plans are just floor plans. Everybody understands these in 2D, and the facades and the rest of the building is 3D. So then I saw, all right, you are doing this in 2D. That's interesting. But there were still components. So I thought, if I could read those components, so I start exporting those to IFC from SketchUp, and then getting that into Revit and reading it through Dynamo. It's like, I can read this. I can see a wall. If this is a component, there's nothing to that component. But then I get back to SketchUp. It's like, that wall is like a library component. So if I just add IFC wall to your library component, you don't have to change your workflow in SketchUp. But I can read it in Revit, Dynamo, so I can see, there's a wall. It's an IFC wall, and it has, of course, I can find the surface. So if you find the surface, you can find the two smallest lines in the midpoints, and that's a line. And then you have a line in the 3D environment that you can say, okay, place a wall here. And that was basically the first thing I did. It's like, okay, I could just create real walls from just a simple surface that somebody just sketched.
That's very interesting. I'm amazed by a few things here. I know I did not use SketchUp myself too much. I just tried once in a time. And I experienced that quite user-friendly to model. So I think it's a bit weird that the architects are not modeling straight up and they just start sketching. But maybe the sketching function in SketchUp is even better, even easier to do this. And then, do I understand this correctly? So you take SketchUp, you export through IFC, and in Revit you get the model. Is this what you do?
Yeah, and through Dynamo I read the geometry, and that started with the walls, and of course then the rooms, because you have floors, so you can get rooms, and it just evolved like that. And then we started, okay, let's look further to the front, because these are just the plans, like the building itself. But what's more important for us architects basically is the areas, the gross area, floor areas. But then we decide, okay, you're making it in some kind of boxes. because in SketchUp, in the design phases, we still need to have these areas to be calculated. So they have boxes and surfaces for dwellings and for the gross area. I was like, oh, I can use that as well. So then the area plans from that. And then we even got further to the front, because then we thought, this is great, but we are designing in SketchUp. So what we're doing is, if it goes to Revit, it has to be one-on-one. It has to be immediately the same thing. So that was taken care of, like sort of course, because Dynamo is, can be a bit buggy. So I think it works great. Colleagues think it works just fine, and some other colleagues think it doesn't work. So that's, we are all three are correct. That's the thing. And then we went to say, what if we can even do the SketchUp part better? And then we went to Nick from IT Cut, a Dutch company, or it's just Nick, that's actually creating plugins for SketchUp. So we sat down and he created a plugin for us for SketchUp that actually exports the area data to Excel. And also because we are always creating Excels for the client, because the client wants numbers, right? They just want to have the gross floor area and the net floor area, all these space data. That's important for our clients because, well, we make dwellings, so they want to sell dwellings and they have to build it. So there's just this way of what's the best ratio between that. One is the perfect one, but that doesn't exist. That's probably a tenth. It would have a 0.99 because there's just a really thin outer layer. But yeah, we can get to 0.8, which is really good. Also with that, because of that plugin that we created, because you can just add another dwelling, export it again. It's really fast. So yeah, then we got from that thing that was like, I can do it with walls. And then we just were getting further into the front of the design phase. And then I think a year ago or 2 years ago, we even got further to the front, because it was like we didn't get these assignments or the contracts for the technical phases anymore. Or basically usually we would say architects, we get the commission for the complete phasing for the design phase and for the building permit and for the technical design and for the construction. But now it's always cut in parts. So they say, okay, you do a definitive design and we'll see if it's feasible, and then we'll get back to you. And then they start calculating for a couple of months, and then they say, oh yeah, great, let's do the building permit. And also just send the model to the contractor so they can look at it. Usually the contractors, they don't, well, half of the contractors say, I don't want to do anything with architects. Other half says, I will work with architects. It's yeah, that's the way it is. It's unfortunate, but yeah, we are not guaranteed to get these commissions anymore. So that's why we thought we need to have a model that can be calculated on in a coarse way. So we need to stay in SketchUp. So we started to modeling our facades in SketchUp. We already did that, of course, in 3D. But there is this Jan Brouwer. He works at DigiBase, which is basically from a contractor, and he made this IFC manager for SketchUp. So you could actually not just export a component as an IFC wall, but you could also create the whole site building story structure of the IFC. And then we did that, and then we did that, and I think we're now leaving it again because we're seeing that we need to get more technical again. So that was like this in-between phase. So that's basically what we're doing is these workflows, they are flows. Also the way of the workflows, they flow. And that's mostly what I do. Yeah, and every now and then I work on a project. So now I'm working on a nice little school.
So you get the chance to work also on projects. But I have so many questions about this, but I'll try to keep it brief. But I'll still ask what I think is the most relevant here. Regarding exporting to IFC from SketchUp, how is this experience? So right now, today, you mentioned that it was like exporting components in the beginning and then something about plugins. Like, do you need different plugins for exporting from IFC, or is standard way that you can do it, like everyone can do it from SketchUp?
Yeah, you can just export. And I think the plugin that Jan Brouwer made is really handy. It's also free, so that's not an issue, of course. You can just it's an easier interface to structure your model. But in the end, you can just create a component, and a group of components can be in a component that is called IFC building story. It's very similar to how you would do it in Blender, for example. Well, when I started I wanted, of course, to learn a lot more Blender, but when I started it, I was like, oh, well, this is a little bit similar of the way I'm creating it, this model structure in SketchUp. Yeah.
Yeah, the way Blender BIM, especially not only Blender, lays out the foundation for all the projects. It's very, very handy. And yeah, using types as well, it's also cool. But now a bit more about SketchUp. How do you feel that, does SketchUp compares with Revit regarding IFC export? Is it much better Revit as exporting to IFC than SketchUp?
I think it's similar. They're both not perfect. They're both far from perfect. Actually, yeah, it's what you see with the SketchUp. There's a lot of things missing. So yeah, you need to, of course, I know Jan, so I could actually ask him to add it. But it's still, if you want to use it solely as your workflow, it's possible, but you would only get like design models. If you really start in the more technical phases, it's difficult, and it's also hard because it's also based on instances. Well, if you know Revit, you have like type an instance, and it's SketchUp. If you want to add properties in a custom piece set, then you need to do that at every instance of every element, and that's really, well, of course, that doesn't work if you're really using it for technical stuff. But basically, in the design phases, nobody really asks for custom piece sets. That only happens more in the engineering phases. There's the real basic IFC structure, you can just do that, and also most of the common piece sets can be filled. But still, it's I think a bit more work than doing any of it.
Yeah, I understand. That's cool to know. I heard or I read somewhere on LinkedIn not a long time ago about exporting from SketchUp to IFC. That is possible, but I had no idea before what this involved. So I'm happy to understand a bit how that works for now.
Yeah, it takes a lot of discipline. So that's why also I think we're not really doing it anymore on the scale that we did it 1 year ago. So it was really a short intermezzo, I think, in a year that we really needed to do it that way. Otherwise, not have been able to meet all the deadlines.
Okay. Meeting deadline is always a good push from the back to innovate, right? So it was cool that you find this solution, especially this using openBIM, right? This is really cool. But what about something else? I don't know if you are aware or if you know at all this other open source project, which I think fares quite well when it comes to Revit and SketchUp, Speckle. I think they have quite good workflow between these two tools.
Yeah, I know of it. I tried to get into it, but I didn't find the time yet to do it, and neither does the colleague that I asked to do it. I said, okay, you look at it maybe, because this might be some good thing for our new project. And well, just like, yeah, but now it's still not getting there. But it's in theory, it looks really great, but it's still difficult to figure out how it works actually.
To take the first steps, that's the biggest barrier always, and see if it really works how you believe it works from what you read, right? This is also my stage where I'm finding myself in regarding the Speckle project. But I see a lot of people writing quite nice feedback on the tool. That is quite useful. So I really hope I would find some time in the future as well to give it a chance.
Yeah, that's always the problem, time. Especially if you're, I'm doing a lot of stuff in the Dutch BIM community, so I have to make choices on what I spend my time on.
Prioritizing, it comes to that, right? What else do you do in this? You're talking about a Dutch BIM community. Okay, what is this? Tell me more about this. You made me curious.
It's not a small group, but basically it's if something new is coming up, then usually you see the same faces everywhere. But it's like we have Dirigo, BIMloket. Those are it's from BIMloket usually was like this. It's not a company. Basically, they just are gathering all the BIM and openBIM initiatives and all the standards. So they gather that, and you can download that from their website. And there is this BIM-based IDS, the BIMbasis ELS, that was released in 2016, basically by 14 contractors. They got together and they thought, we need to have the basis of BIM all the BIM models good. So they were thinking like, yeah, we need to have some position, local position, use the entities, get the right building stories, and make agreements on what you should do there. And that works very well, and it was quite popular. And then I think that was a bit of the start of what I would like to call the Dutch BIM community, I think. And then a couple of years later, there was the IDS Design and Engineering, which is more for the engineering phase. An IDS, well, not IDS, the open standard, but really an information delivery, a specification of what you want. So what we need from the models. And BIM-based IDS is more basic. It is really basic. That's in the name, and it says like general stuff. And IDS Design and Engineering is more specific on what we need. So, for example, of course, we have fire rating in the BIM-based IDS, but there is also surface spread of flame, and there is also stuff about all the hinges and everything from doors, door handles, stuff like that. That's in a specific list. So that was released in 2019. And I think that was also the year, or maybe it was 2018, that we got together to start thinking about the BIM-based IDS version 2, which was released in October 2020. And that was when I got involved in that group, because the BIM-based IDS is just 2 A4 papers. But then they said we need to have a structured organization. So there was like different committees. There was this expert committee, that's where I'm in, and the toepassings committee, which is basically the committee that creates manuals for Revit, for Archicad, for SketchUp, for everything. And of course the more management part of the committees. And then we took quite some time, because we started to find all the iterations of the BIM-based IDS that everybody was making, and all the knowledge of the past years. And we gathered that and we created version 2. So all those people that are involved, we know other people, and basically if there is this other initiative about BCF, the BCF card. It's also a Dutch initiative that creates also like an infographic to how to use BCF, because BCF, to create an issue in Solibri or in BIM Collab or in Dalux or whatever, it's different. You can do a lot more in BIM Collab, but there is this BCF only supports specific entries, like a description and a date and stuff and a picture. That BCF card was an initiative to say, let's just focus on the things that all the BCF exporters and plugins have in common, and then say this is a way of using it. Of course, there is a lot of people involved that, well, everybody knows. Again, it's if you're in these clubs, you get asked for another club. That's basically how it is.
Interesting. That's nice to hear that there are these BIM groups. This is interesting.
I think it's also because the Dutch government doesn't really pushes BIM to the community. They have, of course, for their own assets, the RVB-BIM norm. So it's the Rijksvastgoedbedrijf, which is the company that maintains all the assets for the governmental buildings, and they acquire them. And the school that I'm working on now is also, of course, it's a school, so it's a governmental building. So there is this BIM norm, which was also a big inspiration for the BIM-based IDS, because that was released in 2013. But that's the only thing. Of course, for their own projects, they say you need to do it in BIM according to this guideline, this protocol. But that's it. They don't say anything about private buildings. So they just leave it to us to do it. And that's why there are so many initiatives in the market.
I agree. So yeah, there is no governmental or national mandate. I think that's quite the situation here. Although like with Statsbygg, maybe you heard about Statsbygg from Norway and other entities. But here, the smaller entities, the other municipalities, or maybe even private companies are trying to emulate to some degree something, but still is no like national mandate like it's in other places. But we talked about this. Now, what about Building Smart? What influence do you feel that Building Smart has in Netherlands? Is it to a much lesser degree than these local communities?
No, because I think that because it's found the basis of the BIM-based IDS, for example, is IFC, and all the major contractors, they agree with this. So basically, everybody is creating, exporting IFC models for every project. Even though everybody is working in Revit on a project, which is still very possible in projects. Well, when the contractor also has it, then IFC is not usually, it's still demanded. So we use, for example, on projects where everybody works in Revit, we use BIM 360 to collaborate on the models, but we still export it to IFC because that's basically how our workflows are, how they are at the moment. And that's really great because it's a lot better, of course, than just sharing your Revit models, because there's so much junk in those models. You just want to export something that's clean and only export what is being asked. Yeah, it still works. And of course, with all the issues, that's also why I think we use IFC a lot, because you can really easily open it in every software that you like and create the issues, because that's something that contractors everybody here really likes, to create all these issues for us.
Yeah, well, it's one of the core principles of this schema, right? And this is what is beautiful about it, right? Like, because you are not limited by anything, you can just use whatever you want to open it, to see it. You can even read the code if you want, right? You can. So yeah, I asked about building smart because I wanted to pivot into something else now. Was it last week or 2 weeks ago? I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago. You held this very interesting workshop or webinar, whatever you want to call it, about IDS, Information Delivery Specifications, the standard that should become soon official by Building Smart. By the way, thank you very much for that. It was a very, very good workshop. I learned a lot myself. I got a lot of new things clarified regarding IDS, although it's been a while since I started to have a look at it. So thank you very much for that. Let's talk a bit about IDS. This IDS, not base IDS. Let's start with making a clear clarification about what is the difference between your BIM, your base IDS, and this IDS, Building Smart one.
Yeah, the BIM-based IDS and basically also the other IDS design and engineering, they are PDFs. They're just, the BIM-based IDS is an infographic. And of course, we have a website where you can click and get some more information. But basically, it's a picture of a 3D stair, and it says you need to use the correct IFC entity and include the correct enumeration if possible. That's what we say. And these guidelines are basically to show you where you need to agree upon with each other on the project. It's not that you need to do it. It says, this is a very important topic, and discuss it with each other before you start on the project, and then decide what to do. And IDS, the open standard, is of course an open standard because it's, the best thing, it's human and machine readable, because it's an open standard, and standards are of course standardized, structurized. So it's an XML format, which of course you can read yourself anyway. You don't need to translate it to real text, but it's possible. And what that is, in the most basic way, it's clash control for data. The delivery specification, it specifies what is needed in the model. So you can say that the attribute of the name of the IFC building should be something, and you write it down in your BIM execution plan. But that's then somewhere in this execution plan, somewhere on your file server in a cupboard that nobody reads, probably. But if you put it in IDS, you say, okay, go to the IFC building, the attribute name should be Gebouw A or building XYZ, whatever. And then you can run that as if it was a clash control, at least in BIM Club Zoom. And of course, in other programs, you can probably do that. And I think other software will focus on creating IDS and export that to XML. And I can import that in Revit, for example, because there will be a plugin to read the XML file and then see, I have an IFC slab and it should be an IFC covering. So the specifications, are brought to you as a modeler. You really get them in your modeling software. And that's, I think, the main reason why it will work, why it will become popular.
Yeah, I think although we are still not yet where you have integrated the IDS in the design tools, it's still not so difficult to just quickly check in another tool, in a third-party tool, if your model when you export it. But yeah, exactly how you said, that's going to be the pinnacle, because then you get the feedback, the live, in a way, feedback, right, in your tool. and you are skipping many steps. But we are there. We are still, many of us still try to understand what is this IDS, how they could use it. But this is, at the end of the day, is this to make your models much better and to not leave any room to interpretation, right? Because you will see black and white. This is a mistake. You don't have the right project name. You don't have, these walls don't have the name according to the BIM execution plan or something like that, right? So this is one of the reasons why you believe that IDS is important.
Yeah, really important reason, because what IDS also is that if you are creating the specifications, you are actually you need to think about, what do I need? Why do I need it? Because you're really creating it. Well, instead of I want everything. Yeah, of course, but you need to specify what you need. What's the purpose of it? And that's why maybe we get a better communication, because if I know why you want something, then for me, I'm more inclined to actually add it to the models instead of, oh, this guy wants everything again and I don't have the time. But yeah, well, then you just get bad models.
Yeah, I want everything means I don't know what I want. I don't know how to describe what I want. I don't know what I'm doing, but I need to say everything, you know. But yeah, this is mostly because of lack of understanding and resources, because you need resources to create these kind of things, right? And the more people get educated on these topics, the easier it's going to be that a BIM coordinator will be able to do that. Or right now, maybe there are still many clients who don't have a BIM coordinator in their organization, right? Like we are still there. And maybe there is an architect or an engineer who will do that and will make the switch to a BIM coordinator or BIM manager or something like that, right? Because I think this is the main culprit here, that not because people don't want, but they don't really see the value and there is no qualified personnel to do these things, you know. But I think there are many benefits, and people will understand this much better as we start using this and showcase it, because it's going to be a huge difference and it's going to be quite difficult to stay competitive if you don't use something that improves drastically the quality of your deliveries.
What we also should take care of with IDS is that I think it's really easy to just quickly create a specification that says everything should be filled or some properties. But as you can see in my webinar, well, basically it was the repetition of what I did in the Building Smart Summit in Rome live. But yeah, Leon Verberlo was like, we need to push this so everybody can see it. So that's why we repeated it as a webinar. You can see a lot of examples of what's possible with IDS, and not just fire rating is either defined or not defined. You can also just say fire rating should be 0, 30, or 60, or 120. So you can actually say it has to be one of these, or it has to be a specific value. I think you need to always, every specification should be flipped as well. Most of them can be flipped to say if you have an IFC wall, it should have property fire rating in preset wall common. But you could also, usually with classifications, you can say, okay, and it has to be a classification code 21 dot something. It's the Dutch NLSB code. So you can check for all the walls. But you can also do it the other way around to see, let's see if everything that has this code is either a wall or something else that is possible. So that's also important, that you'll probably get very quickly that people send, oh, this is an IDS for the BIM-based IDS. So this is an IDS for this thing. And then you run it and you think, well, it doesn't do anything because it just checks whether or not there is data present or not, which is important, is an important first step, but you can go much deeper into it, even with the first version. Of course, there are much more improvements to be made with IDS, or enhancements or additions, but we'll just start with what we have right now.
Yeah, especially because it's officially not released, but that does not mean that there are people using it, right? As you, I mean, both know already about this.
Yeah, and version 1 will be exactly the same as the 0.93261 that we have right now.
Yes, but future revisions will definitely improve it. And yeah, but the more people start using it, quicker it should be improved, right?
Yeah.
But who would you say that is this new tool for? Who should be interested in this?
I think it's really beneficial for modelers, especially because, and for the BIM coordinators, because when our clients are basically, because we mainly do housing, I think in the past 27 years, we have like 5 not housing projects. So that's basically what we do. And those clients are either the developers that they just buy a plot, build a building and then sell it. So they don't care about anything else except for selling their product. Of course, they like a beautiful building and of course they have opinions, but still, as regards to BIM, they don't really care that much. The other part is the housing companies that should care a lot because they need to control their assets. And still, there is this ADS IDS, which will probably also become an IDS specification in the future. That's like an overhead organization of all the housing companies. But yeah, there's still a lot of housing companies that don't ask for BIM in the design phase, which is a bit too bad because afterwards they commission somebody to add all sorts of data for the maintenance plans. So that should also be. So IDS is very interesting for those people that need to maintain their buildings or their assets, and of course also contractors, because they already have IDSs, they already have specifications that they require a lot from the models, and they always require it in a specific way. And I hope that IDS will become something that everybody can do it in their own way, and that we still export it the way everybody can use it. Most contractors have their own custom piece set that is always different, but the content is always the same.
I know. I'm working with that kind of stuff as we speak. And there are challenges to more levels. But still, the usefulness is there. Like on the spot, I think if the client understands and he has any exchange information requirements and BIM execution plan on their projects, they are the first one that should benefit the most, because they would get much better deliveries, definitely save much time for checking quality assurance. Then you also have designers, right? Because in this way they will automate how they check the quality of their deliveries. They will save time on fixing issues, right? Because they will find themselves the issues before, and you save time on that. And contractors, in a way, it depends on the type of the contract, right? If you have the contractor in between, and the designer designing for the client, then as a contractor you automatically benefit from both of this, right? But if then you have other type of contract where you are more involved and you have more control, then you might also run yourself this. At the same time, that does not mean that if the client is the most important here and the designer, the contractor should not be involved in these discussions, like what requirements are relevant for them, right? Because if you make this triangle, I think you cover quite well many things. And I need to confess you, I'm very pumped about this, and I can't wait for this to see this in action in not too far away future.
I will be using it on projects this year, I'm sure of it.
Yeah, even if I will do virtual projects, I will use it this year, no matter. Like that's going to happen definitely, because I really need to see if I'm just crazy and think that this is just too good to be true, or is this really so valuable that people just need to understand and to start using it.
Yeah, I believe in it, and especially because the issues that are created from these IDS immediately specifies if it's wrong. It also specifies what it should be, and that's what's also always missing in issues that says this is wrong, or an issue is why is this done like this? I mean, yeah,
exactly. You save a lot of time on that. You will need to invest a bit more time in research to make good specifications, but at the same time, those specifications can also maybe be reused to a large degree on more projects. One thing, right? And then, like you said, like you have already the information there. The producer of the information will know what they need to put there. And exactly, we will definitely have less issues. Like this is a really important one. Are there any challenges that you think, what do you think are actually the biggest challenges to spread this new open standard?
The challenge will be that people that already have these documents, like these big execution plans, protocols, IDS, things on PDF, that they say, I already have this, so why should I create a new one? I think that's always the change management is the most challenging, most difficult thing of our time, I think. I mean, I love new things. I mean, that's why I drink beer, because I go to the shop and I just start browsing and what new types of beer and new breweries can I find, and then I just buy them and start tasting them, because that's what I really like, new stuff. And it's the same with BIM. I like to find out everything from does the IFC schema has to offer me. I mean, when I found that, for example, these sunscreens in front of the window, that when I found out about shading device type, I was like really happy for a week. I was like, oh, this is really cool. I have finally found a enumerated property that I can use, because most enumerated properties are for MEP. And I was always a bit jealous, like, oh, that's great, I want to use it. But now I found something that I could use. And I understand that 99% of the people that are working with BIM they don't really care about that. And it's like, yeah, good for you that you found something like that. But that's what I like stuff. And a lot of other people, they don't like it. They just say, well, this works, so let's keep on working like that. That's why the building industry is going so slow, of course.
That's why I still think that the client has the most critical role in this, because if the clients enforce this on their projects as requirements, then nobody can comment. Nobody can do anything else than just follow that, you know?
Yeah, well, the practice in the Netherlands is that we have two clients. Basically, in the design phase up until the building permit, the client who actually invests, the investor or the housing company, is our client. But then if we continue with the project, then of course the contractor will become our client. So there is this thing of the change between people who pay us to do our work.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, but then that's good as well, because then if you have innovative constructors, general contractors, they can take advantage of these kind of tools, right? Because I was referring to the same thing, just that here, and I'm talking about infrastructure where you don't have this change. It's happening live actually on the project I work. The designer is designing for the client and we build after the documentation we get from the client, This is not changing throughout the whole project. But then, yes, like you said, if the client is not, let's say that the client is not very BIM developed or BIM minded, then the constructor might already have this experience from another project, and could do it, could implement it, or could advise it from the start, There are some good things here.
Usually I create the execution plans for our buildings. Because when we start designing and collaborating with the structural engineer and the MEP engineers, then we need to collaborate. So there needs to be guidelines to work together digitally. And usually I know if we already know the contractors, I know, because I've worked with a lot of them already. So I know what they want. So I just take that and I think what we need on the project. So then I do the client's work at that moment by creating the execution plans and of course also the specifications.
Mm-hmm. We discussed about IDS. Were you around, were you following very closely when the BCF got into the market and the change happened? Do you feel the same? Is the same feeling right now, or is different? Do you feel that IDS could impact even more than BCF?
I think it is actually the same feeling indeed, because when we started working in BIM, it was still closed BIM, of course, and we work with a contractor in Revit, and they checked the Navisworks and created reports which were issues. And I'm not sure if that was already in the BCF format or not, but I don't think so. And then in BonsaiBIM, the building that we won the Building Smart Award for Construction for in 2018, that was the first implementation of BIM Collab, actually, where they were testing BIM Collab with this project. And I'm not sure if that was also, of course, that was based on BCF, but still BCF with extra, because you could use a lot of extra fields to add to BIM Collab. And it's, of course, nice, but it's not really necessary because you want to just export to BCF. And I think IDS will be similar but of course it will be, it will have a greater impact. But I think that that's also because of the time that we're living in, that there's a lot more projects in BIM than 10 years ago.
Exactly. Even if slow, there is more people understanding more things. So yeah, that makes the impact.
It's also a good way of explaining or showing how this transition will happen if you can refer to what happened to BCF, because for a lot of people it went naturally and they just use the software, and most people don't use BCF because as architects we always work with clients and contractors, so we don't have big suites for BIM 360 or for BIM Collab, or so we need to work with the tools that are provided for us. So if we are doing the BIM coordination on projects when there is no such DMS or CDE, I just create BCFs and I just send them to my colleague architects and to the engineers.
Yeah. Well, I think we are in for quite a fun ride, and I cannot wait for it to start and to see it growing. Is there anything else you would like to mention or you would like to share with us that I forgot to ask you about?
Oh, I'm not sure. No, I don't think so. Well, if you want to know more about IDS, I think you can add a link to this webinar.
Definitely. I will definitely put it in the description. Of course, it was a very good one, and definitely more people need to see it.
Yeah, well, or you can also read the documentation, because basically when I started this presentation, because Cubus is making BIM Collab Zoom and the IDS addition to it, they just asked, can you present IDS for us in Rome? Of course I can. So then the only thing I did was read that documentation, and I already started on my story on what I wanted to tell in this webinar or in this presentation, and then afterwards I went to them to see I got then the beta version to test it, so then I could actually see what I was thinking that could be done. I could actually test it. So it's also really easy. You can just read the documentation. It's like 6 pages and you understand it.
You understand the bulk of it.
Yeah, but I think I have some nice use cases to show what you can actually do with it, how it works.
I think you would need some practice to get better, especially with more advanced things, but the core concepts are not very difficult to understand. No, I agree on that. How would you like for people to reach out to you if they would like to contact you?
Well, I'm quite active on LinkedIn, so that's probably the best way to find me. Yeah.
As me as well. Okay, that's amazing. Thank you very much for joining me. I really enjoyed this chat, and I'm looking forward learning from your experiences you will share in the future.
I will share. Yeah, of course. And thank you for having me.
Thank you.